Woohoo! Okay, good morning. Hangover slot. This is the best time of day, right? Right? Work and wake up. Hi, everyone. I'm Tracy. I'm originally from California. I now live in Toronto, Canada. Flew in yesterday, so I missed a little bit of the conference yesterday, but I'm super happy to be here. FYI, I put these slides up on my Twitter afterwards. Sometimes it's confused with Lime Darling. It's Lime Daring on Twitter, so in case you want the slides afterwards. So this is what I'm usually known for in Python. How many people have seen my books? Hello Web App. It's an introduction to Django. FYI, I have a book on Django. The HTML is actually for free online now on hellowebapp.com. But this is usually what I'm known for in North America. The funny thing about being an author with books on Django and being a keynote speaker here at Python Ireland is that when I was registering for Python Ireland, and this happens at every conference I go to, there's always this question, what is your Python experience? And this happened too when I was at EuroPython. This is where I gave the keynote before. And that one was even worse because it showed up my badge afterwards. These questions throw me off, because on one hand, I'm a keynote speaker, which means you want to be, keynote speaker, put expert or 5-star, or be one of those, feel really good about yourself and be a leader on stage. But on the other hand, in both these places, I probably put intermediate. But if I, was being completely honest with you, and this is not imposter syndrome, I probably should put beginner or 2 stars. Now, I understand that why these questions exist, why these questions are on these forums. It's because the conference organizers need to see what general level people are at, and then kind of work on the curriculum to make sure it matches that general level. So I understand that. I don't mean to criticize, especially being a keynote speaker here, and first thing I say is something that's kind of a criticism. But it's exactly what I want to talk about, is this disconnect between this feeling of being a part of the Python, being a part of the Python world, writing books on Python and Django, and yet the curriculum and this path, sorry, it's kind of making lots of noises. This curriculum and path, is this still, can you still hear me? Yeah? Okay. This curriculum and path is not necessarily something that I really want to go into myself. I'm not interested in becoming a software engineer. Ooh, mood lighting. There we go, dramatic. That's the perfect time to come down. When you compress the type of curriculum that you have at conferences like this, you compress it into beginner, intermediate, and advanced, for me personally, the things I'm most interested in would be normally in the beginner category, and yet here I am as a, say, published, aka self-published author and a keynote speaker here. I'm Tracy, and I have no intention of becoming a software engineer. And that feels a little scandalous to say, being that how much I love working and using Python in my day-to-day work. I'm a programmer. I'm just not a programmer. And when it comes to the curriculum at conferences like here and other places, I'm not really going to get that intermediate and surely most of the advanced stuff that is, that's there. And that's where seeing that kind of beginner, intermediate, advanced, putting myself as beginner doesn't feel right. Makes me feel, honestly, kind of shitty that I don't actually belong here. So I kind of wanted to explore this problem in this keynote, kind of talk about my background, and some of the ways I think that things like this, in general, across our entire industry, can be improved. I give a lot of talks. I look at talks at conferences as a place where you have solid conclusions and big, solid takeaways. And keynotes are where I think we can have a discussion and kind of explore some things that don't necessarily have some answers yet, and give some stories. So that's what I'm going to do a little bit here. So, in order to really get the sense of what I'm talking about and a little bit of my background, I'm going to talk about how I started and how I got to this place. Starting with the rocky road to programming, featuring the rocky road that I grew up on. This is Northern California, very, very rural area. Some of the areas that were on fire this and last year, if you heard about the fires in California, it was a really great place to grow up in. I'm very outdoorsy, but that's only something that happened now. And when I lived here, I was lucky to have a couple of family members that in the 80s and 90s that were involved in computers. My grandfather worked at IBM for over 50 years. There's a chip that's named after my grandfather. And another family member that was working in computers. And so I had a computer. All of my memories from growing up, I've always had a computer. And that was super awesome because instead of running around outside and climbing trees, I was inside on these computers playing with the giant floppies and really, really getting interested in computers and what they have to offer. So screw that whole outdoor stuff. Now, when HTML became a thing in the 90s, I got a 14.4K modem and just fell in love with doing stuff like this. And now, for me, when I was between 12 and 16, this is pretty much how I passed all of my classes. Because websites were so new, and a teacher would tell me, okay, write a book report, a giant essay on so-and-so, and instead, I would make a website. And then, when turning it in, I would just go onto the internet and show the teacher my website, and the teacher was like, mind blown, instant A. Even though it was just some markup and a couple paragraphs of information. So much easier than writing an essay. Skated through high school that way. I had some friends that were programmers, people who were programming calculators and programming, starting to work with C++. And my thing was building websites. I did it for my classes. I built a website for the game Creatures. Did anyone ever play that in the 90s, Creatures? Oh my gosh, I'm the only person. I was a big nerd. The author, Terry Brooks, I was in the running for the official Terry Brooks website because official websites weren't a thing then. So mere fact I had a website up dedicated for the author, Terry Brooks, meant I was in the running for his official website. Like, this is the 90s. It was amazing. I actually found the website that taught me HTML via the Wayback Machine. None of the images work, but this was kind of delightful memory lane for me, learning HTML. And then on Wayback Machine, I found some of my old websites, kind of embarrassing. I don't know why there's an undefined up there. This is live, you don't get to see it, you don't get the address. And then I also found my goth period, my dark website with quotes. Yeah. All these lovely framed websites, how far website development has come since then. This was, say 5 to 18 for me, just building websites in the 90s. I graduated high school in 2002, and this is the point where I had all these family members that were in computers, my grandfather working at IBM, I had cousins going into computer science, and I thought, I am perfect, this is what I'm going to do as well. I'm going to get a computer science degree because I love computers. So, I went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. This is a university in the Central Coast of California. It's a really, really good university for computer science. The program is very hard to get into, and I was lucky to enter the program there. And this is hour one, day one. First class I ever went to in university was my computer science 101 class. And I am ready. I have background computers. I'm excited to be working with other students who are as excited and interested in computers as I was. And not 5 minutes into my very first lecture, this was my face. The teacher started talking about things in computers I had no clue about. Again, all the things I was interested in was like the visual stuff, the website stuff, the things you can build. And he was talking about, I think, computer engineering, and I don't remember the terms, but I just did not get it. And everyone else in the classroom seemed to be just like, yeah. And I was just in the back corner being like, what? Like, this is not something that interested me. It scared me. I was wondering if there was a complete class that I'd missed. Because again, this is hour one of my very first class in university for computer science. So I ran after the professor after class Like, was there a summer course I should have been to? Like, why am I lost on my very first day? And he's like, oh, that's fine, it'll get better, don't worry. Well, it didn't really. One of the problems is that my computer science, the introduction to computer science taught Java, which as a very first programming language was not something that was easy for me to pick up on, or for a lot of people, so I've heard. My 102 class, Cal Poly does 4 quarters in a year. So there's 3 quarters, there's a summer quarter, and then there's 3 quarters in a normal university year. So winter, we started working with GUIs, and that's when I started being like, oh wait, this is actually something I'm interested in, because this is something that's closer to building websites. I was able to create an interface where someone could click on something, and something else happens, and I wrote the logic for that something else, and it was visual, and I was like, okay, cool, maybe I am getting this computer science thing. Maybe this is actually something that I'm interested in, going back to what intrigued me about working on computers. And then the spring quarter was Computer Science 103. Now, when I sat down in this class, I think the first hour of this class, the professor said, if you had gotten this far, if you had passed 101 and 102 without flunking, you're in this top echelon of computer science students, because most people will fail out those first 2 classes, which is not something you should be bragging about. And this class, as compared to the other 2 classes, which were starting to teach how to program and how to work, use Java, this class dealt largely with with theory. One of the biggest things we had in that class was taking sorting methods. We had to reverse engineer all the sorting methods, and then write a giant paper with graphs showing why this one is better than this one. And this is something, as again, someone who's visual, who wants to have a button you click that you can write the logic to do the thing. This is something that did not fit in my brain whatsoever. I had a lot of problems in this class. I tried so hard. I was going to study sessions and getting mentors, and I really, really wanted to succeed in computer science. There was this one project that came out from this class where, of course, here is the project requirements and what you have to turn in, and included in that was the rubric for grading, where 20%, like this part of the project is worth 20%, this part of the project is worth 50%, et cetera, and so forth. And when I got the project back from the professor, he had graded it using a different rubric. And if he had used that one that he said he was going to use, my grade would have been higher. So of course, as naturally, what you would do in this situation is you message the professor and be like, hey, can I be graded based on this other system you'd set up? It's natural. Anyone would do this. Shouldn't be anything wrong with this. So this was the moment, when you look back on the things you've succeeded and not succeeded with life, and sometimes you can be like, oh, this is the moment where I figure out this is not for me. This is my moment for computer science. Because that professor responded back to my email saying, yes, he would switch the rubric out with the original one that he said was the grading system. But then this professor wrote me an essay about why I wasn't ready for computer science and why I shouldn't be in that program. He told me in that email, and I wish I had it still, he told me in that email about how lazy I was, how I obviously wasn't studying, how I wasn't trying, that I was trying to skate through my university life by getting free passes. I was studying. I was trying so hard in this class. I was going to mentoring sessions, and I was going to the study classes, and it's just like this theory, this computer science theory was just not fitting with me. And this professor just ripped into me, telling me why he didn't think that I should be in computer science. And so I quit. That was the day. I emailed him saying, that was completely wrong, and he eventually apologized to me, but that was done. I was done with computer science in that moment. So I started out with the proceedings to switch my major, and I ran completely away from computers and into an art degree. I had no intention of doing any programming, much less HTML, and well, CSS didn't exist then, but doing any kind of work with computers at all. I was going to do, other than doing design. No coding whatsoever. It scarred me. I had such an awful experience, and that professor just made it very clear in my mind that that wasn't the place for me. So I eventually graduated, and when I graduated, I got a job as a front-end developer at a startup, and I started falling accidentally back into working with HTML again. These are like literally, if I say job, it was actually pretty awesome. It was a startup in a garage just down the street from my university. So it was just me and a few dudes just like on our computers making this company together. Long story short, this didn't work out for me. I worked with them for 4.5 years and things exploded. But it was a delightful place to be, and I fell back into building websites to them. The funny thing about being the designer at the startup, working with their HTML and now CSS, is that normally front-end developers work with JavaScript. And this experience with Java had scarred me so much, and the fact that JavaScript is completely different and yet there was curly braces meant that I refused to work with JavaScript at the startup. Like, this is how this experience in computer science affected me. There was a full other person in this company that had to do the JavaScript for me because I refused to do anything other than design HTML and CSS. It's ridiculous. So this could have been the end of my story. This could have been, and I think a lot of people have heard these stories before about how this works out with university programming. People how it didn't work out for them, they dropped out and did something else. I hated programming. I didn't want anything to do with it. So my story could have ended there, and I think a lot of people's stories have ended there. And I wanted to go into looking in the bigger picture about how this is in our industry. You know, I ran into that professor later on when I was an art student, and I said, "Oh, I'm really loving these art classes." And he's like, "Oh, I bet you're so much happier." And I think there's a lot of other people out there who think the same thing, that, "Oh, I'm much more happy with this different degree because I'm not cut out for this computer science stuff." We all know that software developers are in super high demand, and this is only going to be increasing over the next few years. The problem is that back in the day in the 80s, women were a high percentage of computer science undergraduate students, but today are a much, much lower percentage. Now, the experiences I went through isn't just limited to women, but I think it affects women more than men, which is why I'm using these stats here. And the percentage of women working in computer science professions has also dropped in the last 30 years, 20 years from the 1990s. I guess it's 30. Ooh. Something I found interesting when I was talking about computer science in universities is that University of California at Berkeley had an introductory computer science class that used to be named the Introduction to Symbolic Programming. And then they tested out changing the name of that introductory course to The Beauty and Joy of Computing. And when they did that, women in the class outnumbered men. Now, you might be like, "Oh yeah, women, they love the word beauty." You might just go to that conclusion. But when you think about it, look at it a little bit more critically. The Introduction to Symbolic Programming, that class title, implies something a lot more narrow than something that's titled The Beauty and Joy of Computing, which implies something a lot more broad. And that's one reason why it could be a lot more interesting to a lot larger groups of people than that previous title. Symbolic programming implies to push you on a narrow path of just becoming a software engineer, whereas Beauty and Joy Computing implies a lot more different paths that you can do with computers. A lot of this is tied to something like the no true Scotsman fallacy, but is more known in our profession as the no true programmer fallacy. When you look at someone and you say they have the ability to do programming or they don't. They are an engineer or they aren't. And that's a lot like implying there's people who can do it and people who can't. That's a lot like saying there are people who can learn to swim and those who can't. just putting things into a black and white, two different boxes. We know that's not true. And if you think this, if this is something that people are thinking, then that would make me as someone who can't do it. By quitting computer science, that would put me into that box of not a true programmer. So while there's a lot of different reasons why women and people drop out of computer science, with women, it's being exposed to computers at a much later date, sexism, et cetera, and so forth. My particular problem with computer science was that it was taught in a way, not the best way for me. It was taught in a way that didn't work with the way that I was thinking. I'm a much more visual person, and theory had just confounded me. And I wouldn't have realized this had the following series of events hadn't occurred. So if we go back to my story, and then enter Python. Ta-da! I worked as a web developer for quite a few years until that company, and then I was in the Bay Area of California. And as you do when you're living in Silicon Valley, is you get interested in building a startup. This is what everyone does. So I wrote this post because I was like, wait, everyone else is doing it, I can too. But then, because I hated programming, I was like, I'll be the non-technical founder, and then I'll go find the technical co-founder who can do everything for me, because I refuse to do any sort of coding. So I wrote this post. It actually went really high on Hacker News, which was a very interesting series of events where I was like interviewing co-founders, and I thought I was doing this the right way. I was like, found someone to work with, we got a Y Combinator interview, and then everything exploded the night before the interview. So didn't have a co-founder again after 4 months of trying to find the right person to work with me, and I was back to square one. And this was the moment where I had to look back at that experience in computer science and think to myself, I really hated programming, but I don't have a co-founder. I really want to build this idea for a startup. I'm in Silicon Valley, I want a startup too. So, do I just quit and become a designer again? Or do I buckle down and try programming again? Look at my future. I looked at my potential future and how much I wanted to achieve this idea, this startup I wanted to build. And magically, Django existed at this point. Django, the fact that Django, the magic in Django that some people love, like me, and a lot of people hate, the people, where Django hides everything that's going on in the background. Today, spoiler alert, I have a startup based on what I've built, and I'm the sole programmer for the startup. I am still fuzzy on exactly what databases are, what's going on in the background of Django, how things are running. But Django makes it so that I could build a web app and build a startup and get customers. I work with over 8,000 businesses now. It allowed me to build what I needed to build. It took away that theory, which was awesome for me as someone who is not a programmer and yet a programmer. I didn't know why things were working, except that they were. So I built this. This is the very first thing. Well, this is like the second design version, but I built this website to help people find wedding invitation designers. I wrote about this process, and this is another thing that went big on Hacker News. For a long time, I was known as the weddings person, which is kind of interesting. Honestly, I hate weddings, so working in this is kind of a funny place to be. I got married 3 years ago. I went to Las Vegas, did the little white wedding chapel, eloped. Almost had Elvis. Like, the whole wedding process just drives me insane. But I like working with businesses. But I built this website. I started learning Django. I built the first website in 6 weeks. This was about 7.5 years ago, which is mind-blowing. And today, Wedding Lovely still exists. I have employees. I'm still the one and only programmer. My employees are all marketing people, help me out with it. We had our best month ever this last summer, getting 7,000 in revenue. So not a gigantic success, but in this process over the last 7 years, was accepted into 500 startups. I've raised money. It's been the most magical process, something I didn't think I could do when I left computer science. I didn't think I could build and launch a startup. And this is where Hello Web App came, because as I was teaching myself Django and learning how to work with Python again through Django, I would learn a little bit of Django, and then after I figured it out, look back on it and be like, wait, for someone like me who's very visual, this process of learning Django just didn't work. I figured it out, but I thought, wait, there could be a much better way to teach this. And I waited years hoping that someone would write the Django resource for visual people like me, like designers. When that didn't happen, then I was like, okay, you know what, screw it, I'm just going to write my own book. So I wrote Hello Web App. Again, it's been out for about 2 years now, which is why I put the whole book online now, so in case you want people to check it out. And as a designer, I had to make a pretty book, and I totally forgot to bring books here. I'm an idiot, sorry. I would show them around if I could. They're really beautiful in person. I've been very lucky to be the Python ecosystem and Python and Django communities have been very awesome in helping me build and launch these books. It's actually 2 books now. I've raised funds with them on Kickstarter, and since then I have done workshops all over the world. So that's me in a nutshell. And now that I'm running a startup and I've written books, I want to take those books and go back to that professor and just wave it in his face. Be like, this is what you almost prevented me from doing. I could just be a designer right now. Not just, but you know what I mean. Going back to the larger picture, again, I'm not the typical programmer. Like I program, I work with Django, but I'm not a programmer. At 2 separate conferences last year, completely unrelated, I would just happen to be sitting in the audience, and random people, I would just overhear conversations, and both times, I can't believe this happened twice, people were like, man, I love Python, but I hate Django. Django makes people terrible, terrible developers. It shouldn't be taught. I can't say that I love Django, and people can do a lot of great things with it. Again, I'm not, but like I can't argue totally with them because I'm not going to say I'm a great programmer myself. There's no way that I would be hired at something like Google or Facebook, nor do I have any intention of doing so. There's this program in New York called the Resource Center. Join the best programming community in the world. It's like summer camp for developers where you can just go and work for 3 months and improve your programming skills. And I thought to myself, this sounds awesome. This could be my way of becoming an actual good programmer by going here and just spending time improving my skills. And to apply to Resource Center, you have to fill out an application, and then eventually you have to write a program. And in the program requirements, it says, you cannot use a framework. And I was like, oh no, because I have only used Django. I have a lot of code in Wedding Lovely because it's running 11 different properties, and I don't know, it's kind of this giant octopus mess of code. And let me tell you, when I teach beginner Django, I actually open up my live code and show the students, and they can see, even as beginners, that my code is not the greatest, but it works, which is awesome. But I've written so much code using this framework, but I'd never written a straight Python program before creating this application for Resource Center. But I actually had a lot of fun with it. They suggested maybe a tic-tac-toe program, and I was like, okay, cool, fun challenge, I'll make a tic-tac-toe program. But the funny thing is about learning how to do a straight Python program is that there was a lot of things about running from the command line that did not make sense to me. If name equals main, run main. I was like, what? This is weird. But I figured it out. I wrote this little terminal tic-tac-toe game. It has some artificial intelligence, so you can play against the computer and try to win this tic-tac-toe. This was really fun. This is something I should have built in university that would have shown me a little bit more about how to program. But I'm here to build web apps. I'm here to launch companies. Spoiler alert, did not get into Recurse Center. That's a whole nother story. It's something that still kind of hurts my heart to this day because I thought that would have been really awesome. But you kind of see that being an engineer is not the path I'm on. I'm on a completely separate path. I was sent this paper by my friend Greg Wilson in Toronto about the issues that folks have at coding boot camps. It kind of mirrors a little bit of the problems I have. In a nutshell, while there was graduates who successfully found a software engineering job after the boot camp, there was a lot of challenges faced by those that chose to learn programming from a boot camp than from a university degree. That no true programmer fallacy is very much exists for boot camp students because they don't feel like a true programmer as well, even from going through these programs. And boot camp certificates are not perceived as high of a value as a university degree. And in general, if you went through a boot camp and got contract or freelance work, it wasn't seen as being as valuable as a full-time job. There was a few instances in this study where people quit the program or quit coding after graduation to go back to their formal job. And there's a lot of people who talked about that even after 6 months of finding a real job, finding an actual engineering job after these boot camps, after 6 months, they still didn't feel like an established programmer. Sometimes I'm reminded that I'm being judged for my lack of experience, my personal lack of engineering-ness. That Recurse Center program is basically 101 level stuff. And even I've been surrounded by a lot of really good people in the community. A lot of people have supported me building Hello Web App. But I ran this survey just seeing if someone would be interested in me running an online course teaching Django using Hello Web App. And most of the responses were very positive. Not a lot of people were interested in paying for something like this, which is hard because I work for myself and I'm actually pretty low income. But there was this person that took the time out of their day to write me a comment. Told me that I need to level my skills up more before acting like an authority. That I wasn't a good enough programmer to be up here giving a keynote or be writing books. And then, of course, they just stabbed the knife in a little bit more, telling me that my book wasn't attractive either. That was fun. Thank you. But I'm an example of a programmer in this industry that took a different path. That I can use things like Python and Django to build things. And I can be an authority about the skills I have. I'm not, our industry isn't just beginner, intermediate, advanced, just one separate path. There's so many different places that you can go by learning Python and learning Django or learning just a little bit about programming, building startups, working with documentation. There's so many different things you can do. You don't have to just level up your skills before becoming an authority. Basically, accepting that in our industry, not all programmers have to look the same. Not all programmers have to do the same thing, be interested in the same thing, or have the same coding ability. So that's the key of what I want to talk about, that just being accepting of these different paths that people can take, that not everyone wants to become a rock star ninja engineer. It's about our ecosystem as a whole, with the frameworks and boot camps and what they're doing to help more people learn and use Python in different ways. So a little bit of a celebration. One of the awesome things about our industry is that they say about 2 out of 3 developers in our industry are self-taught. But you can alter that to say that 3 out of 3 folks are self-taught. It just happens to be that 1/3 of them also have a degree in computer science. This is awesome. This shows how much information is online, how many resources are there to help people jump into programming without necessarily having a university degree, because university degrees might not fit with their way of thinking. With my personal niche with Hello Web App is trying to help more designers jump into programming. The people who want to learn a more like GUI, not knowing what's going on in the background, but they just want to build a web app. And there's a lot of other resources online now to help people use Python in different ways Did you know that there's this whole slew of people that use Python for typography? You can do Python scripting in Font Lab to work on, to be building your fonts, essentially, which is really awesome, is that there's people who use Python, but they aren't here at these conferences. I wish they were. There's a lot of things we can learn from people using Python in different ways. Of course, there's Python for science. Frameworks like Django has increased the amount of people jumping into our ecosystem and starting to use Python. Boot camps, coding workshops, online tutorials increase our pool of beginners. Now, going back to those guys at that conference who are like, Django makes horrible programmers, they could be looking at the world as before we had a much smaller group of people in industry, and there's a certain contingent of bad programmers, and now we have more people, and therefore that percentage of people in our industry are now more bad programmers. But the people who are learning Django or are in the coding boot camps or are learning in different ways aren't just becoming software engineers. They're also filling out startups and documentation in science and typography. And people who read my books aren't just going to become engineers. They could do nothing, or they could start a startup, or become a scientist or a web app developer. A friend of mine at a conference was working on his presentation at a conference, and he told me, he's like, can you review my presentation? This presentation's for you because you're a beginner. But when I looked at the subject, it's not anything I would be interested in. It's because I'm on a different path. So I wanted to use this presentation as a celebration of how far we've come, and kind of talk about my background, but also what's going on in our industry. And there's a few takeaways, some things I wish that were done a little bit better. In general, reject that one true programmer myth. Remember that there's a lot of things that people can do. Not everyone's becoming a software engineer. There's a lot of different places and places in this industry where people can go. Hat tip to Jake and Cabot Moss, who did this amazing keynote at Pycon 2015, embracing the mediocre programmer. Because not only is there not bad programmers and good programmers, there's a lot of people in between, and we need to embrace that. We can embrace the fact that the majority of people are going to be mediocre programmers. I wish there was more specificity at conferences when it comes to complexity of material. And that's what I mean by the beginner, intermediate, and advanced that I see in a lot of places. Not necessarily on the registration forms, but you see that at conference programs where I say, oh, this is beginner, this is intermediate. I wish it was more, this is beginner plus web apps, this is beginner plus data science, this is intermediate plus this. Kind of just shows someone that there's different paths you can specialize in, not just one single path in our industry. And mentor. Like if you're established in whatever you do, go out and find someone who's not and help them along. It might not be obvious to someone who's not in an industry how many different paths are available to them. If someone is struggling with one option, there might be another option they don't even realize exists. If I make a list of the things I'm good at, things I'm bad at, it's pretty obvious that I'm not going to be a Google engineer, but I'm the perfect person to be running a startup. And last but not least, I wish there was more guides and tutorials which are aimed at niches. Not just, let's learn how to program with Python, but let's learn Python for engineering. Let's learn Python for artists. Let's learn Python for writers. And this is the best place for someone who is a beginner, who's new to the industry, who might have just figured out something new. This is where beginners can teach as well. And I talk to a lot of people and they say, oh, I can't, I'm a beginner. Why would anyone want to read when I want to write? And beginner voices are actually the most valuable because they remember how hard it can be. So if you're feeling like a beginner, you can also write these resources and start today. Again, I wrote and self-published these books feeling like a beginner. The power in our community lies within its diversity, not just accepting that people can look different, but also they can do different things. We can use Python and programming and computers to empower people to learn something new faster, get them into technology, allow them to try different things. The beginners that are jumping into our industry today are not only going to be our future software engineers, they're also going to be our future typographers, our documentarians, our startup founders. I hope this presentation helps you kind of think about our industry as a whole, raise some questions, start a thought process, and I look forward to having a discussion with you afterwards. Thank you.